that offer has been coming our way for thousands of years. Our passage from Isaiah doesn't say the word peace, but it certainly describes peace, where there's justice for the poor, rulers lead with righteousness, offers images of the animal kingdom living at peace that we know isn't their nature. Probably a metaphor for us. It's not really our nature to be at peace, but what would it look like if we actually lived the peace that we know is possible? There's a Christmas story that I've heard for years, and I was checking, one of the advantages of the internet is you can actually do fact checking, and lo and behold, it's not just one of those sweet stories, but it actually happened in World War I. So we're talking about 105 years ago, as World War I was ramping up, 6 or 7 months into it, December of 1914. The Western Front was fully engaged, and you know the stories from history of the trench warfare. I don't know if any of you saw Wonder Woman. They have somewhere, different places, at least most of the stories give the attribution to the German side starting to sing. One story talks about starting to sing Silent Night in German. The English-speaking side, which were mostly British, didn't understand the words, but they recognized the tune, and they sang back. And one 19-year-old wrote about it, Charlie Brewer, that we would just sing back and forth. And before long, somebody even said, "If I don't shoot you, will you not shoot me?" in broken English. And they actually got out of their trenches. And for most of the 500 miles of the Western Front, the soldiers declared a truce. The generals, politicians, no. But the soldiers stopped. They took time even to bury their dead. They sang some other songs. Of course, they even played soccer. Gave each other chocolate and cigarettes. Sometime, I think it's the 26th, but in one of the locations, the one opposing general commander on the field raised a flag. After firing 3 shots in the air, said "Merry Christmas." The other commander raised a flag, said "Thank you," shot 2 shots in the air. They saluted each other, and then they went back to battle. Can you imagine if we took to heart the power of what God gives us to break down walls that divide us? Paul in Romans says that what was written that we might grow in our faith, that we might know endurance, that we might know what it is to have the wisdom of God in our hearts. When John the Baptist stood up as a crazy man out in the wilderness, I left out the part about the locusts and the honey and the camel's hair. He just said that this is the make straight a path. This is the voice of one calling out in the wilderness. Make straight a highway for our God. He's quoting a different part of Isaiah, 40th chapter. We hear in this passage from Isaiah about a time to come that transcends all the horrors that we know way too well. Chapter 10 of Isaiah, right before, has talked about God saying to the Assyrians, I used you to discipline my people, but you got haughty, and as a result, you will disappear from the face of the earth and never return. We actually serve a mighty God. He talks about the cedars of Lebanon as a metaphor for the Assyrians. And a cedar, you cut it down, it doesn't grow back. So it's a direct contrast to say a shoot will come from the stump of Jesse. He's also giving a slap in the face to the kings of Israel and Judah, because he's basically going back to the father of the first king, Jesse. And everything about the Jewish kingdom will be wiped out, and then the stump will produce a shoot. And we've got a bunch of shoots in our stump over here from the tree that we cut down. There is a power in what God has done in the world that life wants to hold on. Even whenever we say, be gone, and you're dead, it still fights back. Well, picture that. Even as dead as a stump looks, in this case, it was going to get pretty dire. The whole nation being hauled off into captivity. And the empire that hauled off the northern kingdom, they were scary people. You know, we have a story where Hezekiah, who's around this time, he asked them to quit speaking in the native language of the people in Jerusalem because they're too scary. And he just comes up with this very haughty attitude. Well, I've served this king over here, and we're going to clear you out. You might as well know it, people, because you're dead meat unless you give yourself up. Then some of you might live. So this hope and this pointing to peace doesn't come at a time when things are going well. Knowing that this was the topic this week, I've asked a few people, well, what does peace mean to you? In our Bible study Wednesday night, scenes were described of being able to look out over nature and just be aware of how small I am and how big and glorious God is. And that scene in itself can help sort of wash over us with a sense of well-being and being at peace. I've been struck by a number of folks who have said, I often don't feel peace because I get focused on the wrong things. But if I focus on God, then the peace actually is there. And people have given testimony that that can be true even in very, very difficult situations. It brings an image to my mind, though. I can remember Sam being at this, I don't know, 5 years old maybe. He was going to have some kind of shot or something. We were at the doctor's office, and his eyes were about, twice as big as his face. And he's looking at the doctor. And I was in front of him, and I was just trying to say, Sam, just look at me. If I could get him to just look at me, it was going to be okay. I thought about that when this summer, our grandkids, so you know the story, our grandkids, our older two, were victims of very severe neglect. And the oldest one has a very high level of anxiety, even at 4.5. The younger one, he says, okay, I'm thinking about the pool, so that it's a little bit cold for a pool story, but in our pool, the younger one, we have to remind him, no, put a life jacket on before you jump into the 9-foot deep side, because he has no fear. He just, but the 4-year-old lives with a fear because of the trauma that he's been in. And he's in his life jacket. These things are, they're the full wraparound, not just the little ones. And he won't let go of the side, even though his little brother just, boop, boop, boop. But I got him to let go by putting him on my chest. So he's up against the wall. I said, okay, put your arms around my neck. Up against my chest. And look at me. So we're that far apart. And I just keep looking at me. So I'm swimming on my back. He's on my stomach. Look at me. And we swam the whole length of the pool. And I could say, see, you can do this. That is so us with the Lord. Whatever it is we're afraid of, whatever it is that overwhelms us, His presence can get us through. As I was walking across the courtyard today, I was taken back to last summer when I got the call about my youngest grandson's heart problem and speeding off to the emergency room, and would he make it? Walking out there and just crying out to the Lord. And He hears our prayer. But I walk out there now, it's just, I see that view, and it's like, Texas is way out there, but the Lord's there. No matter what the problem is, He's there. And it doesn't matter when the problem is either. I won't get the whole story correct, but I was struck when we were sharing about our healing teams this week, and we were giving different testimonies of how the Lord had been working through us in prayer. And Mel described one situation where the Lord had given him some very simple words to share with the person who had come in for prayer. And the person had asked for prayer about something else, and that had been prayed for, and prayer had been happening. And they were important prayers, but they were sort of relative to what happened later, sort of superficial. And he said, well, and I might get the words wrong, but it was something like, well, the Lord said, basically, hello, greetings, peace. And almost instantly, the person started crying. He asked the question, well, what does that mean? And she knew that back here in the deep recesses of her heart, there was a place where there was no peace. And it actually came flying out as she shared it with them and got prayer over it. It had to do with trauma and death and heartache. But she could let, in that space, the Lord touch her. And that peace start to minister into her heart. The song we sang, using the image of the lambs, there's no distance that the Lord won't cross to reach us. There's no barrier to the Lord's love to encompass us with His love. And even when we fight, that peace can be there. These stories of peace are really an individual experience, but they're also a corporate truth. So when we pray for one another, when we wrap our arms around each other, that's part of God ministering to us. And we have to know to do that. When you let that presence into your heart, not only does it give you a strength to endure, as Romans says, but you also become an anchor for this world and for those around you. I was thinking of a friend who's gone to be with the Lord yesterday during Pearl Harbor Remembrance. Mike Myers. He'd been a young Marine in World War II and was in the Battle of Clairemont. He was known as a Christian. At that time, all the soldiers, Marines, sailors were given Bibles. He was always seen reading his Bible. And as the landing crafts are getting ready to beach at Clairemont, some of his fellow Marines came to him and asked him to pray for them. Bullets are already flying. Person next to him falls immediately. 1,500 die in 72 hours, 4,500 Japanese. He's wounded. Of course, when you're wounded, you don't actually get to go back to the nurse's station. You're sort of just stuck there for a while. After he was patched up, he actually went back. I don't know if they still do that. When I met him, you never have guessed that he had that warrior presence, because he'd become such a gentle man and a man of peace. He wrote poetry. I asked his daughter, she couldn't find it to get it to me yet, but when she does, I'll read it to you. But he would write poetry, and that's how he coped with the images. And his poetry, like his faith, were reliant on God. When he was passing, I went to visit him in the hospital, and he was no longer responsive, but the family was there. There was probably about 15 or 20 in the room. And there was a lot of pain and anxiety. Yes, he was in his 80s, maybe even 90, but they still didn't want to let him go. When they told him I was there, he actually responded, which is like, oh my goodness, that's a sheer delight. And we made a circle, and we started singing Amazing Grace. And the whole room was filled with a different kind of peace. And moments after we finished, before the end of the day, he was gone. But in that moment, we knew that it didn't matter. That there was something more still to come. And that he had given himself his whole life to a Lord that would never leave him, never forsake him, was always there. And because of that, his life was a vehicle for that love and grace and peace to be present to those around him. And as we remembered his life, like we so often do here, we remember that same legacy and challenge to go and do likewise. To let the truth permeate all of who we are, so that we become an emissary of something that is so much bigger than ourselves.